Well, hey folks, it's Caleb again with another Caleb's Corner coming at you for Freed Indeed Ministries. Hope you all have been doing well. So my monthly slot again, and this one's going to be a rather timely one because we are going to be doing yet another response video to Pastor Gabe Hughes and his channel, WWUTT, when we understand the text. This one is going to be about Lent. And like the other video about his video on Eastern Orthodoxy, this one is yet again, how can I say this, charitable, is very cringe. The last video, as I hope I demonstrated well, Gabe Hughes really bit off more than he could chew because he really slandered and misrepresented Eastern Orthodoxy and what we teach. And yet again, he has really shown that he really doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to Lent. I think even more of a blunder in this video. But it is my hope that with this video, I'll be able to correct some of the things he says and make it more clear to those of you who just subscribe to Freed Indeed so that you may share this information with your friends and family. And again, Pastor Gabe Hughes, if you see this, open invitation to come on to my monthly slot or any slot on Freed Indeed. We can either formally debate this with a neutral moderator, or you can come in and we can simply have an open discussion about what your videos portray. I'd rather we have a discussion more than anything. But anyway, let's get into this video. Again, be the same format. I'm going to stop it every now and again whenever we get to that point. But let me go ahead and share my screen right quick with you. And we'll get started, okay? And again, I'm going to stop it every so often whenever we get to a point that needs to be more fleshed out, okay?
What is Lent? Well, it's a period of fasting between Ash Wednesday and Easter Sunday that lasts 46 days, or 40 days not counting Sundays, started by the Roman Catholic Church after the 4th century.
Hold it. Okay. So he mentions that Lent is a period of fasting for 40 days after Ash Wednesday, between Ash Wednesday and Easter Sunday. And he says it started by the Roman Catholic Church in the 4th century. There is so much to unpack here. So the first thing is that he's describing Lent in Roman Catholic terms. And the thing is, he's portraying this as a Roman Catholic holiday, as a Roman Catholic holy day. And this is simply not true. Lent is not only observed by Roman Catholics, it is also observed by Lutherans. It's also observed by Anglicans. So there's two Protestant denominations that observe Lent. It's also observed by the Eastern Orthodox Church, the Oriental Orthodox Church, and the Assyrian Church of the East. So to say it's a Roman Catholic holiday that was invented by Rome in the 4th century, that's just simply ridiculous. The whole Ash Wednesday thing, that is a Western Christian thing. In the East, we don't have a Ash Wednesday. And our date of Easter is different, although Lent does take place 40 days after Easter, before Easter, and it is a period of fasting. That's probably the only really true thing he said there. To say that it was invented by the Roman Catholic Church is not only true, but this idea that it didn't come around to the 4th century, probably not in its present form for sure. It didn't come around until the 4th century. Sorry, I had a bug on my screen there. But to say that it's not older than that, I wouldn't say that, because I think he's going to get into this later in the video, because I remember watching this a while back. But it was actually, it was birthed out of the process of receiving converts into Christianity, especially when most people coming into the faith were from pagan backgrounds and not Jewish backgrounds. As the faith began to spread, more Gentiles were coming to the faith rather than Jews. Let's go on and hear what he has to say further on.
For since then, the rules of Lent have been in constant flux.
Ever since then, the rules of Lent have been in constant flux. For who? For the Roman Catholics? Yeah. For Protestants like Lutherans and Anglicans, yeah, they kind of just follow what Rome does. For Eastern Orthodox Christians, Oriental Orthodox Christians, Assyrian Church of the East, nope. We still practice Lent in the same exact way. We're going to touch on that more as he goes on in this video. So he's really making a criticism of the Roman Catholic Church, but the false presupposition and the false assumption and assertion he's already made is that that Lent was invented by the Roman Catholic Church. So he's already starting with a very big false assumption to begin with. So yeah, it's for Rome and the Western Church. It's been in constant flux, not for the Eastern Church.
It used to be that Easter was for baptism, and those who were going to be baptized would fast at their own discretion.
Okay, let me kick that back a bit here. It used to be that Easter was for baptism, and those who were to be baptized would fast at their own discretion. And he has a quote from Tertullian here and another quote from Eusebius. Here's one thing, it's kind of a side note I noticed. I noticed that a lot of Baptists who want to start using the church fathers to support their really heterodox theology, the church fathers they tend to cite are Tertullian and Eusebius and Origen and others like that. And Tertullian died a Montanist heretic. Eusebius died a semi-Arian heretic. These are not people who have a lot of weight in Orthodoxy or Catholicism. They're useful in the fact that they report historic information, but we always look at their information with caution because they are not the most trustworthy sources. So you have this quote here about people being baptized on Easter. That's true. The church used to baptize people in mass on Easter, or Pascha, as we call it in the Eastern Church. It had a quote from Eusebius here that says this dispute is not only about the day. It's talking about the Quartodeciman controversy, where there was a controversy about when to celebrate Easter, but also the actual character of the fast. Some might think that they ought to fast for one day, and some for two, still others more. That was eventually resolved. It eventually came down to the point that it was determined that the bishops and the priests had the jurisdictional authority to impose what the fasting rules were. And in the Orthodox Church, this is very uniform. So again, he thinks this really supports his claims, but not really. So let's keep going here and see what else he says.
After the Council of Nicaea, the church began to formalize traditions, and it became that the leaders of the church were supposed to fast 40 days in preparation for Holy Week.
Yeah, and that did eventually happen. And it eventually that all people in the church would fast during Lent. And the reason why that was done was to show solidarity and support for those catechumens who were going to be baptized. We are social creatures, we are communal creatures, and it's easier for a person to maintain a discipline when other people are participating in that same discipline with them. And the church has the keys to bind and loose. Jesus Christ said to the apostles, whatsoever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. So they have the authority from the apostles and from Jesus Christ to make traditions and to make holy days like Lent and fastings for laity and leadership binding. Okay. So I could see why a Baptist would be opposed to this, because their church structure is pretty much directly democratic, or ran, by the pastor and the deacons, and they're beholden to no one but the pastor and the deacons, and sometimes just the pastor and sometimes just the deacons. But that's not the way the church is set up. The church is a hierarchy of bishops, priests, and deacons, and we are not little popes in and of ourselves. And unfortunately, that's sort of what Baptist churches do end up happening, is you end up getting little mini papacies being ruled by individual church being ruled by the pastor, or sometimes ruled by the deacons. But the point is that, yeah, the church has the right to bind and loose regarding holy days and fasting practices and things of that nature. Of course, he's going to disagree with that, but okay.
But in the 5th century, Catholicism replaced believers' baptism with infant baptism, and Pope Leo said that everyone must fulfill with their fast the apostolic institution of the 40 days, claiming that Lent was something the apostles came up with.
Okay, stop it there. Let me kick back here. So he claims that in the 5th century, Roman Catholicism replaced believers' baptism with infant baptism. I could do a whole video about why this is false. There are, I don't know if any like Presbyterians or Dutch Reformed or Anglicans or Lutherans have watched this, but they might go back to drowning Baptists if they were to see this kind of claim. No, the Roman Catholic Church did not replace infant baptism with, or replace believers' baptism with infant baptism. That is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. We have Saint Cyprian of Carthage talking about infant baptism. We have Polycarp of Smyrna talking or sort of mentioning in passing, alluding to his baptism as an infant. I mean, my goodness, this is just no. Believers' baptism and infant baptism. This idea that oh, the mean old Roman Catholic Church replaced believers' baptism with infant baptism. That is not true. It's patently not true. And there are many Protestants who would take Pastor Gabe to task on this, not just the Catholic and Orthodox Church. I would even argue that infant baptism is not only supported wholly by Scripture and wholly by tradition, but I would argue that this is even practiced in Judaism. If you're familiar with the mikvah cleansing rituals, one of the ways the Jews would receive converts to Judaism is that let's say it was a woman being married to a Jewish man who was not Jewish, the woman and her infant would go inside the mikvah and immerse themselves 3 times. That includes the infant, because children are seen to be part of the household. Ancient people do not think in rugged individualistic terms. This is an Enlightenment thought that was sort of birthed on the principles of the Reformation. And honestly, this kind of rugged individualism is also seen in the Baptist Church. My salvation is not purely about me. My salvation is about the other people around me. We are a communal group of people, one single body, of one faith and one baptism. So my sins affect not only me, it affects those I commune with. It affects my family. And the good things I do don't just affect me and my salvation. They affect the salvation of others to one degree or another. And so this idea here of children being received by baptism into the church, I believe is a very ancient practice. It's not something the Roman Catholic Church invented in the 5th century. As I said, Saint Cyprian of Carthage, if I'm not mistaken, predates the 5th century. And again, he speaks of infant baptism. So it's like, please do a little research, Pastor Gabe, please. Now, the claim that Pope Leo or Pope Saint Leo talked about Lent being something the apostles came up with. I've actually looked at that sermon. It's sermon 42, I believe it is, by Pope St. Leo the Great, and about Lent. And I've scoured that thing, and there is no claim that the apostles came up with Lent. There is a claim that the principles practiced in Lent are in line with apostolic principles regarding fasting and prayer. And he uses the words of Paul and the apostles to justify and support the practices that are practiced during Lent, including fasting. He does not directly say anywhere in that document, oh, the apostles came up with Lent. Nowhere, absolutely nowhere. You can look that up on New Advent if you don't believe me. It's sermon 42 by St. Leo the Great. And here's the thing, even if he did say that, I wouldn't have a problem with it. because not all of the apostles' teachings were written down. Some were taught orally in person, and those were communicated to the leadership back and forth. This is the one Protestant mistake I see with sola scriptura, is that they make this assumption that unless it's written down, it's not binding. Well, we have occurrences of Paul teaching 3 years, I believe, in Ephesus, and not one thing he taught in those 3 years was written down. It's just given one passing reference. Is what he said during those 3 years any less significant than what his epistles say? I mean, are we I mean, is the church's experience of Paul and St. John, St. James, and St. Peter limited to what they wrote down? I mean, I don't think so, especially in the Gospel of John, when St. John the Beloved actually says that if we were to write about absolutely everything Jesus did and said in his lifetime, I don't think the world could hold the books. I think that a similar thing could be said about the apostles. What was written down was not the full scope of their life and teachings, and some of these teachings have been passed down orally through the church. And people say, well, that's like the telephone game. You start here, and by the time it gets to you, it's a totally different thing. That's not so for ancient people. More research on human memory and thought patterns are revealing that ancient people had much better memories than we do now. And given that the church has been committed to oral teachings, and much of the leadership in the Orthodox Church is in Middle Eastern countries and in ancient Eastern European countries like Greece and Russia, where the oral tradition is still very strong, I find that very doubtful. This idea that, oh, the telephone game. No, I just don't find it convincing whatsoever.
After Lent became about fasting rather than baptism and spread from the leaders to the laity, then came the dietary laws like.
Hold on a minute. So this idea that Lent became about fasting rather than baptism. Again, where is he getting this? In the Orthodox Church, we still Easter Sunday baptisms are still a thing. We still like to receive converts on Easter Sunday, if possible, right? So this idea that, oh, well, Lent's just all about fasting now, it's not about baptism, that is not true. It's patently not true. If a church has catechumens that are eligible to be received into the church on Easter Sunday, they do it on Easter Sunday. It's not limited at Easter Sunday, but if possible, the church receives converts on Easter Sunday. So again, where is he getting this? He says, here come the dietary laws. Let's hear what he says about that.
Like abstaining from meat and dairy, but fish was okay.
Okay, they abstain from meat and dairy, but fish is okay. Here's the thing. Again, this is only true in Western Christianity, Catholicism, and the few Protestant denominations that still practice Lent. In the Eastern Church, we eat nothing but vegan food during Lent. We don't even eat fish. We don't eat oil. We don't even drink wine or anything like that during Lent. Okay, so again, it seems like he's really hedging his whole criticism of Lent on this false assertion that the Roman Catholic Church came up with Lent, and it's simply it looks really embarrassing that he just thinks this, because a little bit of research, it would have shown that Lent is practiced by much more apostolic churches than simply the Roman Catholic Church. And so anyway, it's just, I feel it. I'm not going to say anymore. We're just going to keep watching. Okay. All right, let's keep going.
Canadians ate beaver because it lived in water, and that qualified it as a fish.
Canadian Catholics ate beaver because it lived in water, and that qualified it as a fish. Okay. So he's kind of laughing and is like, oh, haha, look at how these stupid Roman Catholics would eat beaver because that lived in water and it qualified as a fish. Haha. Well, here's the thing. What he's not understanding is that the formal classification of animals, which was taxonomy was invented by Carolus Linnaeus, right? And the thing is that in the ancient mindset, anything that lived in the water was in fact a fish. That included dolphins and whales, eels. Eels are fish. That included crustaceans. That included, it's not that people were stupid. It's just that in the ancient world, people categorized things much differently. We categorize things based on biology and things of that, and like that sort of categories that are based on a little bit more Aristotelian reasoning there. But this same sort of thought process continued on into the 17th century. So it's not really weird to think that that the Roman Catholics would have categorized beaver as a fish. It's simply showing Pastor Gabe's ignorance of the way people used to categorize animals and plants and other things like that. But in the Eastern Orthodox Church, we wouldn't eat beaver at all because we're not allowed to eat meat of any kind, including stuff from fish and shellfish. So anyway, let's keep going here.
Fish. By the 20th century, you could exchange meat for anything, like fasting from your cell phone or chocolate or Facebook.
Okay. So that's an interesting point. Again, his criticism is really not being levied at Lent. It's simply being levied at Roman Catholic practices concerning Lent. Yeah, by the 20th century, you could fast from your cell phone, chocolate, or Facebook. 2017, Archdiocese of Hartford implemented a fast from cell phones, but only on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. In the Orthodox Church, we consider this cheating when it comes to fasting. Fast from your favorite music or your favorite TV show or your phone or chocolate or whatever. And for us, that's not really fasting. For us, fasting is not eating certain foods. That is one of the things that will inconvenience you the most, and one of the things that you will actually feel a little bit put out and a little bit of in pain about and discomfort. Okay. So yeah, this would be cheating from an Orthodox perspective. And Lent, we eat totally vegan. Okay. So yeah, I would agree with Pastor Gabe here. This is a bit, we would not agree with this at all. So anyway, let's keep going.
Look, what does the Bible say about Lent? Nothing. The Roman Catholic Church just likes to make stuff up.
Oh, Lord, here we go again. What does the Bible say about Lent? Nothing. The Roman Catholic Church just likes to make stuff up. Again, he's assuming this false narrative that the Roman Catholic Church invented Lent. That is absolutely fake news. They did not invent Lent, as I've already talked about here. It preceded the Roman Catholic Church. And quite frankly, so what if Lent is not in the Bible, right? There's a lot of things that aren't in the Bible that Christians believe are true, and not just Orthodox Christians, but Protestant Christians true. The word Trinity is not in the Bible. The word Bible is not in the Bible. Christmas is not in the Bible, yet Protestants like to celebrate that. Easter is not in the Bible. I mean, it's just like, come on. It seems like, honestly, if he could make, I think he actually does have a video on Christmas, but he's a little bit more nice about that. He's more like, oh, well, celebrate if you want, but you don't have to. And it's a different thing entirely. But I think it's kind of picking and choosing here. Yeah, this is really not a point at all, because he's assuming a heresy like sola scriptura means that, oh, we're not supposed to celebrate Lent because the Bible doesn't say so, or you don't have to celebrate Lent because the Bible doesn't talk about Lent. Yeah, but the Bible does talk about fasting and prayer and meditation. And as I was mentioning before, the church has the apostolic keys and the right to impose certain structures and certain celebrations and certain discipline upon the laity if it's determined that this is beneficial to the soul of the person. And the church has determined that Lent is certainly good for that. One of the things that I admire about the Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church as well is that they impose periods of fasting upon the laity. And people are like, well, that's just not right. Well, why is it not right? Honestly, why is it not right? Are not the church leadership supposed to be our spiritual fathers and mothers and our elders and our pastors and our guide, our shepherds and things like that? then they have to have certain amount of authority over our spiritual practices. And here's the thing: if you don't, if you give people the option to fast or not, most people are not going to fast. At my time as a Baptist, my time as a Protestant in general, except when I was an Anglican for a very brief moment of time, fasting was optional. You could fast or you couldn't, and most people did not. Because here's the thing: when you make that an open thing, you can fast or you won't. What a person could say, yeah, Lent's a really good thing to do. Fasting is a really good thing to do during Lent, but you don't have to. Well, guess what? When a leadership takes a position like that, what the laity here is, that's not important. So the one thing I like and I admire about apostolic Christianity is that they impose and put on these periods of fasting in the church calendar in obedience to Christ's command for us to fast. And I think and it helps us to redeem our year by going through the cycle of the church calendar and learning to fast as Christ did and participating in the story of his 40-day fast in the desert, which is what Lent corresponds to. By learning to fast, we learn how to feast as well. Because here's the thing: in America, we eat so much food and food is so readily available to us that we don't know how to feast. We really do not, because we feast every day. So anyway, let's keep going.
To make stuff up. But Jesus did say this about fasting. When you fast, don't do it like the hypocrites who want their fasting to be seen by others. Truly, I say to you, they have received their reward. Instead, anoint your head and wash your face, that your fasting may not be seen by others, but by your Father who is in secret, and he will reward you. So maybe what you need.
Okay, so he points out, so this is a jibe at the practice of Ash Wednesday, when the ashen cross is put on the forehead. We would actually agree with Pastor Gabe here. The ashen cross on the forehead is a complete disregard to Christ's commands in the Gospel of Matthew. We are not supposed to boast in our fasting. We are not supposed to show in any sense whatsoever that we are fasting. We're supposed to just keep that to ourselves, and we're supposed to be fasting for the betterment of our souls. And so, yeah, I would agree. You shouldn't be marking your forehead with a cross during Lent or the beginning of Lent, which is why the Orthodox Church does not do this. So again, he's leveling this, thinking he's taking Lent down one bit at a time. But in all actuality, he is simply criticizing practices of Roman Catholic churches, because again, he's building this on the false assertion that the Roman Catholic Church made up Lent, and they did not. So, okay.
Maybe what you need to give up for Lent is Lent when we understand the text.
Maybe what you need to give up for Lent is Lent. No, no. You as a Christian should be learning how to fast. And for my Protestant viewers who are watching this video, if you've never been through a Lenten fast, I wouldn't recommend, if you want to try it, I wouldn't recommend that you just jump in head first and, just cold turkey, start eating vegan for the next 40 days. No. What I would recommend that you do is I would recommend that you, if you want to learn how to fast during Lent, perhaps make one or two of your meals for the next 40 days vegan, and then one of your meals just normal with meat. Or you could eat vegetarian, which is a lot easier to do than eating vegan. And that means, keep dairy, keep seafood and shellfish, so pescatarian essentially, and eggs and cheese, but leave out meat, like beef and pork and things like that. But anyway, you should not give up a tradition simply because someone practices it badly. That's letting the enemy win. That is not proclaiming Christ has conquered. Okay. Just because someone practices a tradition badly does not invalidate the practice of the tradition itself. Okay. the Orthodox Church practices Lent very differently from the Roman Catholic Church. And I would argue that we have always practiced Lent in the way it was meant to be practiced. So in other words, don't let folks like Pastor Gabe try to dupe you into thinking that everything is some boogeyman Roman Catholic invention that's out to condemn your soul and pull you into the infernos of hell. That's not true at all. Go look up Sermon 42 by Pope St. Leo the Great. You will see that there is no indication that he claims the apostles invented Lent. Go and read St. Cyprian of Carthage, where he talks about infant baptism. Go read Polycarp, where he hints at himself being baptized in it as an infant. Go look up the mikveh practice of conversion on YouTube. There's some videos of mikveh conversion ceremonies for people who convert to Judaism. It's almost identical to the baptism we do in the Eastern Orthodox Church, which is by triple immersion. And infants are included in that. But anyway, that's it. So for those of you who are getting ready for Lent, we're almost there, guys. So get ready to suffer for your benefit. I don't mean suffer as in torturing yourself, but get ready to endure a long race as usual, and dedicate your Lent to someone who you, and your prayers and your fasting to someone who you know really needs it besides yourself. This will be beneficial to you, of course, but one of the things that we make a practice of in the Orthodox Church is dedicating our fast to people who are in genuine need of prayer, and our meditations and fastings way more than others. So keep someone in mind. Ask the Lord to search your heart and put someone on your heart whom you will dedicate your fast to. I'm still searching through that myself. Other than that, guys, I will see you again in March for another Caleb's Corner. We'll have to see what I do next. Maybe we'll do some more video responses. I'm really beginning to like this because it helps direct what I need to talk about. So anyway, y'all have a wonderful day, and God bless you all. We will see you next time.